What up, everybody? Back again here with our negative number unit. Today we're going to be adding and subtracting positive integers without crossing zero. So let's dive under the water and see what our objective is today. Our objective today I will be able to add and subtract positive integers without crossing zero by using a number line. So everything we're going to be doing today is on a number line so that we can conceptually understand what's happening before we teach you the shortcuts. All right, to review, here's our basic addition equation, and this is what we're working on today. Our two parts that we are adding are called the add-ins, right? So blue and red, and that is going to give you the sum, right? And you've learned that a long time ago, but it's always good to review. Your first add-in is where you're going to start on the number line, okay? That's where you're going to start, and then your second one, this is where you are going to move. Today we're either going to be starting at a positive or negative add-in, and then our second add-in that's telling us to move, these will all be positive today. So we're going to be taking a positive or negative and then adding a positive to that, and that of course is going to give us our sum. Let's review one more key thought from last lesson before we get started, and that is subtraction is dead, right? We talked about that in our last lesson when we talked about making zero pairs, and so if we're starting at 8, okay, so this subtraction equation tells me we're starting at 8, and then we want to move left on the number line, right? We want to take away 6. Instead of subtracting, the way we're going to represent moving left on the number line is rewriting this as the additive inverse, and we are going to be adding negative 6. So instead of subtracting, we're going to be adding, and so what you're doing is you're adding the opposite. So we change the subtraction sign to addition, and then we want the opposite of positive 6, which would be negative 6. This is how we're going to represent moving left on our number line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And of course, we know the answer is 2. Now, when you change subtraction to its additive inverse, you don't always have to do that, right? Subtraction isn't really dead. But this is a great skill to be able to have, because eventually what you're going to want to do is sometimes you're going to subtract, and then sometimes you're going to add the additive inverse. It just depends on the situation and what you feel comfortable with. So in our next few lessons, we're going to pretend like subtraction's dead, but really it's just sleeping, and we're going to rewrite subtraction as adding the opposite, or its additive inverse. So let's take a look at two I do problems. Here we have negative 8 minus 3, and here we have negative 8 plus 3. So in our first one, we want to move to the left 3 spaces, and in our second one, we want to move to the right because we're adding a positive. So I'm going to rewrite this as negative 8 plus negative 3, right? Because we're not, subtraction's dead. We want to rewrite this as adding the opposite. So we add, and then the opposite of positive 3 would be negative 3. So we're going to start at negative 8, okay? So here's 0, count over 8 units. That should be right here. And then we want to move left 3 spots because we're adding a negative, right? The negative sign tells us we're going to be moving to the left on our number line, just like we've been learning. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, and we're going to end up at negative 11. So negative 8 plus negative 3 would be negative 11. Here we're starting at negative 8. I'll do this one in green, right? And we're adding 3. So the positive tells us we're moving to the right on our number line, just like we did before. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3 to the right, and we're going to end up at negative 5. So negative 8 plus 3 means Q would equal negative 5. Again, using a number line, the negative tells us we're moving to the left. The positive tells us we're moving to the right. So from here to here, we were adding 3. But when we wanted to go backwards in purple, we were subtracting 3. So you can kind of see the difference visually between adding a negative and adding a positive. Let's take a look at a we do problem. Now we're starting with a positive 9 in both of my problems, but here we want to move 5 units to the left, and here we want to move 5 units to the right. So we're going to rewrite this subtraction as adding the opposite, so adding a negative 5, okay? And when we start at 9, right here, and we move 5 units to the left, because again, that's what the negative sign is telling me the direction to go. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm going to end up at positive 4. So when we took away 5, or when we added a negative 5, we ended up with 4. So P equals 4. When we started at positive 9 here and then we added, our positive means we're going to the right on the number line. So we went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we ended up at 14. So when you add a positive, oops, that's a positive 5, and you move to the right, Q equaled 14, right? And you've been doing this type of question for a long time, but you can see the difference between adding a negative and having to move left versus adding a positive and moving right. For our U-try problem, we have negative 7 minus 7 and then negative 7 plus 7. So go ahead, if you're ready, you can pause the video and try this one by yourself. If you're not ready yet, you can do it as another we do problem, and that's totally okay. Hopefully you just paused it though and gave it a try. So we're starting at negative 7 for our first one. Okay, so here's negative 5, 6, 7. And then I want to move to the left 7 spaces. So really, I'm going to rewrite this as adding the opposite. So the opposite, I change the subtraction to addition, and then the opposite of positive 7 would be negative 7. And when you move 7 places to the left, you end up at negative 14. So P equaled negative 14. When you start at negative 7 and then you move to the right 7 spaces, we should know that these are opposites of each other, so it's a 0 pair. So when you move 7 to the right, you're going to end up at 0. So Q equaled 0 for this one. Hopefully you're able to get both those correct. If not, it's okay. You can go back and rewatch the video. You can find some practice online and continue to practice your skills. It's only okay to fail as long as you learn from it, so keep getting better each and every problem you do. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. We really want you to have a conceptual understanding of what you're doing when you're adding and subtracting integers. Again, thank you so much. Check out our negative number song. You can check us out on all the social media sites. We would love to have you comment, let us know where you're watching from, and subscribe. Instructabeats, out.